are fast-moving.
Unlike other big rallies,
Cockpit earlier at about 7 a.m. A group from the Coast Guard.
Welcome to #P8 Vote 2013. Today on Rappler, DFA Secretary Albert Del Rosario urges ASEAN to rally against China's fishing and airspace laws. Mindanao floods leave at least 34 dead and 500,000 displaced. And a bomb blast injures at least 28 protesters in Bangkok. Hello, I'm Ai Makaraig, sitting in for Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. Philippine Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario urges the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, to exercise regional solidarity in the face of China's Fishing Law and Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. Del Rosario criticized China's rules during the ASEAN meet in Myanmar Friday. China's fishing law requires foreigners to seek permission before fishing in the disputed South China Sea. The ADIZ in the East China Sea subjects aircrafts to China's laws and imposes defensive emergency measures on violators. Del Rosario says China's fisheries and airspace laws, quote, violate the legitimate rights of coastal and other states under international law. The Philippines, China, Brunei, Malaysia, and Vietnam all have maritime claims over the South China Sea. Rising floodwaters in Mindanao forced nearly 100,000 families to leave their homes Friday. Heavy rain triggered by a low-pressure area last week hit areas still recovering from 2012's Typhoon Pablo. The rains displaced nearly 500,000 people across 14 provinces in regions 9, 10, 11, and Caraga. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, says 34 people are killed. At least 65 people are injured and 7 remain missing. Officials say parts of Butuan City and more than 200 villages and districts lining the banks of the Agusan are flooded. On Friday, State Weather Bureau Pag-asa says Tropical Depression Agaton is spotted at 165 kilometers northeast of Hinatuan, Surigao del Sur. Signal number 1 is up over 8 areas: Southern Leyte, Surigao del Norte, Surigao del Sur, Dinagat Islands, Agusan del Norte, Agusan del Sur, Davao Oriental, and Compostela Valley. It's been more than 2 months since Typhoon Yolanda, known internationally as Haiyan, ravaged the Philippines. At least 58 countries pledged a total of almost 23.8 billion pesos or $539 million in aid. Of these, cash pledges totaled 2.8 billion pesos or $63.4 million. But help is coming in trickles. As of Friday, the Philippines only received nearly 600 million pesos or $12.3 million in cash, which is roughly 21% of the total amount pledged. The situation is similar to Haiti's after a magnitude 7 earthquake shook the country. Only 53% of aid reached Haiti 2 years after the quake. A United Nations official said countries tend to forget. Budget Secretary Butch Abad says what we heard them say at the height of the Yolanda relief operations versus what you see them now delivering by way of cash, there's a big disparity. Abad adds it might also be possible that most of the country's funds have already been committed to other priorities toward the end of 2013. Energy Secretary Jericho Petilla promises to restore power to all homes affected by the typhoon by March. The aftermath of the storm left affected areas without electricity for weeks. 2 months after Yolanda, Petilla says the department prioritized restoring power in town centers. But he says some homeowners were not prepared to connect to the grid and receive electricity.
Now, what we're doing right now is making sure that the electricity is now going to the household. So status, by the end of February, we should be able to connect about 80% of all households in the Visayas and 100% by end of March.
With the weather expected to get hotter this summer, Quiteles says the department is preparing for the energy demand.
The demand for electricity this coming summer is a bit tricky, and that's why we're trying to come up with the proper projection, because that's the only way we can see whether we have enough supply. So our supply may have gone down, but demand has gone down as well.
Quiteles also says local politics did not get in the way of power restoration.
I think the power restoration is the least political of them all, because everybody wants it. Okay, everybody wants it, and nobody else is able to do it. But when it comes to electricity, nobody wants to take it. Nobody can take it. It's only us. So to some extent, we were spared from politics when it comes to restoration on the power.
In November, Quiteles promised to resign if he failed to restore power by Christmas. Quiteles made good on his promise, but the president rejected his resignation. The Energy Secretary admits putting his job on the line was a reckless move.
You know, December 24 was pretty tight at that time when we did the computation. But the biggest fear I had was media was going to report along this line. The secretary promised, okay, but best effort, okay, no assurance, okay, and then some tweeters and bloggers might come and say impossible, you know, and that's the last thing you want to tell the people in Leyte when they are totally devastated 8 to 10 days from day zero. It's a bit reckless, but if you weigh recklessness and hopelessness, it's a no-brainer. Okay, you have to bring up the high hopes of the people, because okay, you can be reckless, you can still do rehab. You lose hope, there is no rehab.
Justice Secretary Leila de Lima says anti-trafficking officials constantly conduct raids to rescue victims of cash for cybersex schemes, but adds authorities need more resources. This comes following reports of an international probe into cybersex operations in the Philippines. Senator Loren Legarda urges the Justice Department and the Interagency Council Against Trafficking to ramp up their efforts, citing the growing cybersex industry as, quote, another storm brewing in the country. On Thursday, Communications Secretary Sunny Coloma says the sex abuse ring highlights the importance of the cybercrime prevention law, which penalizes cybersex and child pornography. The Supreme Court stopped its implementation following controversial provisions on online libel. In a related story, police in Taiwan bust a human smuggling ring and rescue 35 Filipino women forced into the sex trade. The women were rescued after investigators raided 2 pubs in southern Taiwan Thursday. Police arrested the suspected ringleader, identified only as Mr. Hong. Hong was accused of recruiting women and promising them professional dancing jobs. He took away the victims' passports upon arriving in Taiwan and forced them to work as sex slaves. Prosecutors say Hong was later released on bail. It might take over a year for the Makati Regional Trial Court to hear the serious illegal detention case filed against alleged pork barrel queen Janet Lim Napolis. The Makati RTC Clerk of Court says with a number of witnesses, the hearing might take up to a year. The defense plans to present over 17 witnesses, including Napolis and her brother and co-accused Reynald Lim. Napolis is currently detained at Fort Santo Domingo in Laguna for serious illegal detention charges filed by her former aide turned whistleblower Ben Hurlui. The prosecution says it may add more witnesses before the first trial day on February 18. The Commission on Audit, or COA, says the perks paid by the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, or PhilHealth, to its employees are illegal and unreasonable. On Thursday, COA adjuncts PhilHealth's appeal to reverse the disallowance of bonuses and allowances paid from 2003 to 2004. COA says PhilHealth paid its own officials and employees almost 88 million pesos in perks. In its decision, COA calls the illegal payments a betrayal of trust and grave abuse of authority. COA earlier ordered other government-owned and controlled corporations to return 2.3 billion pesos in perks. The United Nations Child Rights Watchdog in Geneva grills the Vatican to flesh out its commitment to stop child sex abuse by priests. Pope Francis promised zero tolerance of abuse, but members of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child says the Vatican has not established mechanisms to investigate and prosecute priests accused of sex crimes. Past cases were often covered up by superiors who transferred offenders to new parishes instead of turning them over to police. A former Vatican prosecutor says the Vatican does not cover up the abuses, but adds the Holy See is legally responsible only for implementing the UN Convention on Children's Rights within the Vatican City. A bomb blast injures at least 28 people in Bangkok during the latest opposition protests attempting to shut down the Thai capital. On Friday, TV footage shows several people on the ground as ambulances whisk away the wounded. Police are still investigating what device caused the blast. For the past 2 months, the Thai government faced several opposition rallies, clamoring for the ouster of Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra. 8 people have been killed and hundreds injured since the start of the rallies. The protesters want to cut the political dominance of Shinawatra's brother Thaksin, whom they claim exerts authority despite his self-exile. Let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 4, the World Economic Forum, or WEF, says the growing gap between the rich and the poor is the biggest global risk this year. In its annual Global Risk Survey, the institution says the next most likely risk is extreme weather, followed by unemployment and underemployment, climate change, and cyber attacks. The WEF also says respondents were highly concerned about the possibility of more fiscal crisis. At number 7, initial tallies by state media show more than 90% of voters approved the new Egyptian constitution following a 2-day referendum. The official results are expected by Saturday. The government says the referendum is a strong show of approval of the army's ouster of Islamist President Mohamed Morsi. Officials say Army Chief Abdul Fattah al-Sisi, who led Morsi's ouster, is monitoring the vote as he considers running for the presidency. Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood claims the referendum is a farce and promises more protests. And at number 8, 5-division boxing champion Floyd Mayweather Jr. shoots down questions about a potential fight with Manny Pacquiao, saying he didn't need to fight the Filipino boxer because his recent fights have been high-grossing events. He also says Pacquiao's tax situation plays a role in the Filipinos' desire to fight him. Pacquiao reportedly owes $68 million in the Philippines and the United States. Mayweather adds Pacquiao is really saying, "Floyd, can you help me solve my tax problems? Get me out of debt?" For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. Crime caper American Hustle and 3D space saga Gravity top the Oscar nominations list with 10 each, followed by historical drama 12 Years a Slave with 9. They are among 9 movies nominated for Best Picture for the March 2 Academy Awards. The announcement of nominees includes several surprises, like the multi-nominations for The Wolf of Wall Street, which divided critics over the portrayal of pleasure-seeking financial traders. CNN reports the biggest shocker was the snub of Tom Hanks for Captain Phillips. Pixar was also left out again for animated feature. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel and your vote comes down to the mood navigator in the middle of the front page, which crowdsources the mood of the day. It also gives you the top 10 stories that got the most clicks. Today's mood navigator is bloody red. Let's start with this story. Mayweather mocks Pacquiao yet again. 38% of people don't care. 25% annoyed. Another story from entertainment. Bieber's iPhone seized, 50% of people also don't care, 20% angry. But half of the stories in our Mood Navigator are in red. COA, PhilHealth Perks Illegal Unreasonable, has 79% of readers feeling angry, 6% happy. But the story that got the most votes is about the Marcoses. Paway property is ours, says Bongbong Marcos, 72% angry, 9% annoyed. All contributing to the mood of the day. Today, most people are angry. That's Rappler's newscast for today, Friday, January 17, 2014. Visit Rappler.com and watch your newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Ayi Makaraig, and as we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.